did them, and I did just when I wasn't around and stuff. But he kind of gave me the impression that he had done them, and like pills and stuff, like prior to me being around. And I don't know. He always talked about these specific people and these specific characters, and they were very dark and they were very twisted. But I took it all artistically, and then it wasn't until after he died that it took years for me to be able to go back and start looking at those things, and I started seeing them quite differently. Um, he, the year before he died, things got really weird. He started talking differently. He started being really forceful about his beliefs. Everything got far darker than it had been, a lot more real. I kind of, I always felt like he had mental illness, but I did too. And it didn't really seem like anything terribly significant outside of just like emotional instability. But the year before he died, it started to get weird. And everybody that was close to him, the few friends that I knew of his that were close to him and stuff, recognized it. And we all kind of mentioned it. We really didn't know what to do about it. And like he was so enveloped in this world, this magical world that we thought and assumed that he had created. And he would talk about things that were so dark and we just didn't understand the reality of them. I think everybody assumed that these things were just like artistic expression, more or less. Um, and he kept telling me that he wanted to tell me. He's like, I have things I want to tell you. I have these things I want to tell you, but I can't. And eventually I will. And he kept alluding to things, and I didn't know what he was talking about. And he kind of went off the deep end to a degree, because like he started talking about how Jesus did, to his disciples before he died, like how he was like, I'm gonna go away, and I'm gonna go to another world, and I'm gonna do all these different things, and I'm gonna come back to you, and I'm gonna reveal myself to you, and like I know you guys don't understand what I'm talking about now, but you will. And we didn't, and we ended up later on, and it was all so crazy. But like it was because I didn't know he was actually involved in magic at the time, like, and think magic was a real thing. I thought it was all just like people playing dress up. I didn't understand. Even with the stuff that I had been through, even with the stuff I had experienced, I still didn't get it. So then, like, ended up getting married. He never liked my ex-husband. He didn't like when we dated. He didn't like that the dude didn't treat me right and didn't respect me, and he said those things openly. My ex-husband didn't like him because he didn't like that I had a male best friend, and he definitely didn't like that my male best friend didn't like him. So I just kind of kept those two worlds separate. But I think Alex was my friend. I think that he had always kind of thought that I wouldn't that this would just be another guy, and that eventually I would realize that he was not for me and I would move on. But instead I got married, and he was not expecting that. So when he found out that I had gotten married, I told him, but it was like maybe a month afterwards. When I told him, he stopped talking to me for a couple months. Now I got married December of 2012. Just in case the end of the world was going to happen, I wanted to make sure that I'd made him an honest man. That Randall was my ex-husband, and I wanted to please my family. I wanted him to be able to be part of my family like he wanted. I wanted to please the church that I was trying to be a part of. I did not get married for any right reason. Um, but yeah, December of 2012, before the end of the world. And Alex stopped talking to me, late that December, or maybe it was even in early January. And I didn't hear from him again until like few days before Valentine's Day. He called me at night Randall wasn't happy that we were talking. Um, so I spent a lot of the time in the car talking to him, or just like outside in the patio and stuff. But we talked for like 4 or 5 hours. He was extremely distraught at the time. Uh, I he sound I didn't know what to think because he didn't sound like himself. He didn't sound sober. I didn't know much about drug use at the time. My assumption now would be that he was definitely on drugs, but at the same time, knowing what I know now about especially black magic, but like magic and stuff like that and the effects that it has on a person's psychology, like he very well could have just been really fucked up on some shit, but like he was being weird. We were having a really deep discussion just about all these things. He was just like, telling me honestly how he felt about my marriage, telling me honestly about why he was hurt by it, why, he's offended that I wouldn't tell him first. And, before I went through with the marriage and different stuff like that, I'd kind of pulled away for a while and different stuff. And then it moved into, he told me this story about uh, some random dude who I think used to be a friend of his, or it was like a friend of a friend, something like that. But some dude showed up at his house covered in blood because he had jumped through a window or something, or he had gotten his ass beat or something like that. But he said that he had like pieces of glass that he had to pick out of this dude's head, that the dude was covered in blood, and that he came to his door and he was literally just bleeding on his doorstep. So Alex had let him in and let him, take a bath or whatever to get him cleaned up, and was like essentially like helping take care of this guy. And like the way that he was talking about it was like, because this guy couldn't go to the police, he had nowhere else to go, and Alex knew that he had nowhere else to go, but he also felt like helping this dude was putting him in a really bad position. And he was like being really vague, and I was listening intently. I wasn't even talking the majority of this time, um, but I had no idea what the fuck he was talking about or what he was getting at, and I was really scared for him, and I was really confused, and I kind of was just like, is this dude drunk? Like, why? What the like? Is this real? Like, what is he even talking about? He was like telling me all these things, and then at one point he was like, how I keep saying that there's like something I want to tell you, but I couldn't, but I would eventually. And I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, well, I'm gonna tell you now. Are you ready? And I was like, yeah, man. I mean, I have no idea what this is getting at. But you've been talking about it forever, so yeah. He was like, well, the reason that I couldn't tell you this is because if I tell you any of this stuff, it could get me killed, or it probably will get me killed, or like it's supposed to get me killed. And I didn't take these things as serious. Like I took it like he was off his rocker, like he must be mentally ill and having a breakdown, psychotic break or something, or he's on drugs or some shit. Like I didn't take this stuff seriously. But I listened intently and I treated him with respect about it. I treated him like he was serious. And then the stuff that he said, like I couldn't even process it at the time. Um I Shit was so wild. But he tells me, essentially the things that he tells me were that, okay, so this is all fucked up. I knew that he didn't have a dad. I knew about his mom. I hadn't met her, but he had told me tons of stories about her, all these different things. His mom was one of those like cool single moms where she was like, she'd date all these dudes or whatever. Like she was cool and casual about things, like not in a bad way. Like she was cool and casual about things, but like she'd drink with him or smoke pot with him and like didn't have a problem with him doing those things. And she was always just like chill. Um, and like she was kind of a hippie, or she was kind of into, her own spiritual, she was spiritualist and different types of stuff. Well, so I understood what he was saying about her all those different times. Like I got a good impression of her. I think he'd shown me pictures of her and stuff even. Um, he tells me that he has this uncle who's not really his uncle. He's just his mom's really good friend. And But he's always been there, you know, and he's always been there like an uncle. He was like the first person to smoke pot with Alex, and probably the first person to drink with him, or maybe one of the first people to drink with him, or that's what they would do even when he was very young. And he said that, you know, this uncle of his got him to start smoking pot when he was like 10, 11, 12. They would drink back then. And he was always real cool, you know, like a Harley type guy. And he said when he was 12 that this uncle asked him, or like there was one time that they were chilling, they were smoking and drinking. And he was like, hey, what do you think about cults? And Alex was like, I don't know. I don't know. He's like, do you think that you know, they're cool? Like, what do you think about this or that or whatever? Asking him different weird questions, and Alex was like, yeah. I mean, this is a grown ass man that Alex looks up to. So like, basically anything he says, Alex is gonna be cool with. He doesn't really know. He's also only 12. But I guess his uncle like, it's like, well, would you, you know, like I'm in a cult. I'm in the satanic cult. And Alex is like, oh, that's cool. He was like, do you want to be a part of it? And Alex is like, yeah. He's like, are you sure? And Alex is like, yeah. And he's like, well, if you say yeah, you need to know that like you're gonna have to go through an initiation and you're gonna have to do some wicked shit. Can you handle that? And Alex was like, yeah. He had no idea what he was signing up for, but he's like, yeah, I can do it. He's like, you have to do whatever I tell you to do. You don't get to ask questions about it. You have to do it. He's like, you can't be scared. You can't hesitate. You just got to do whatever I tell you to do. You got to do whatever it takes to get initiated, and then you'll be part of the club. Like, you know, can you go through with that? Are you okay with that? And Alex was like, yeah. You know, this 12-year-old kid is fucking drunk and high, getting groomed by this grown ass adult. So what Alex tells me, and I can't verify these things. I can only tell you what was told to me. But I know that this shit is real. I know when he was telling me he wasn't just saying this shit. I know this shit happens. I know Kenosha, which is where it was. I know that this stuff happens everywhere. I know that it's real. I can't verify that this is what that he was actually part of it. But I believed him when he said it. I just didn't know how to process it, and I still believe him. He told me that, they told him when his initiation would be. Maybe it was later that night, or maybe it was a few nights later, or something like that. I think it was right around Halloween, which is why I wanted to talk about these things. It was just Halloween yesterday. Just started making me think about this stuff. Alex didn't know what he was getting himself into. He just knew that he couldn't say no as soon as he agreed to it. And so then even apparently his uncle and a couple other dudes, grown dudes, showed up at his house all wearing black. They told him to wear all black. They told him that they would pick him up in a van. And he went out. They showed up or whatever. He went out into the van, got into the van. He said he got into the back of the van, and they were all kind of like sitting back there. They all had their black on, and they handed him a black ski mask, and they all put one on. Before they put it on, they're like, okay, are you sure? You can back out right now, and then none of this ever happened. But if you say yes, you have to go through with whatever we tell you to go through. And he was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, like, this is what I want to do. And then they essentially told him again, but this time with a gun to his head. One of the guys that he didn't know took a gun and put it to his head. I don't know if he showed him that it was loaded or if he just let him assume that it was loaded. I don't know if it was loaded. I don't know. But with a gun to his head, told him that if he told anybody anything that would happen, they would kill him. They would kill his mom. And that if he didn't go through with everything that they told him to go through, that they would kill him or kill his mom. And at that point, he was like, okay, yeah, whatever, yeah. So they took him This is so fucked up, and I know it's so hard to talk about, but like, this shit is real. The shit really happens. It's so fucked up, but like, the shit really happens, and people need to know that this shit really happens. Sorry. So they took him into the ghetto and they drove around until they found a kid. Alex said they just saw this kid out. I don't know if he was riding his bike or what. It was probably like 8 to 10 o'clock at night, so it's just gotten dark. It's already dark though. And they kidnap him. They pull him into the van. They, put a bag over his head or whatever and pull him into the van. And they take them to, whatever basement that they had their temple in, that they did their shit in. And Alex said that it was this little black kid who was probably like 8 or so. And they handed Alex, I don't even know if it was the gun or the knife. I don't even remember. But they made him kill him. The way he told the story was that they made him kill him and cut off a piece of his body and eat of his flesh. And that then they put him on an altar and they like performed a black mass and they all engaged in an orgy with Alex involved as a 12-year-old who had just killed a child and eaten part of them. And then he said, even when he said it, it was like I understood what he was getting at, like why he couldn't tell me these things, and that if these things were real, like that's why he couldn't tell me, because him telling me, like he was probably being watched, and like people can't know these things, or his life would be at risk, and him telling me these things was putting his life at risk. And then he told me that when he first met me, that he had like worked through the ranks in the whole, through these satanic ranks in order to gain different sorts of powers to become a powerful warlock, and that he was a powerful warlock, and that when he met me, he had marked me as his muse, and that his intent was essentially to manipulate me into a type of servitude towards him, a relationship where I would serve him as his muse in order to harness my energy for his own power. And that he didn't realize how powerful I was and that I was protected already. And he lied about it for a while, because when he realized that he couldn't actually use me as his muse the way that he thought that he could, which like I didn't know that stuff was happening, but like how that looked was essentially like the first time that he tried to be with me in any sort of way and I rejected him, like he had already performed witchcraft on me and spells on me to make me fall for him. So the fact that I didn't was like a sign that like his magic wasn't as powerful as he thought that it was. Which was one thing for his ego, but was a whole nother thing when it came to the actual active, like he had told these people that were part of this cult that, you know, where they're murdering people and shit and eating people, like that I was the one that was marked and that I was going to be his muse. And when I had rejected him, like that put him in a fucked up position. So he just kept playing this game with me. And like that's why things had always been the way that they were between us. He was like, all of it. Like, it's because I've been performing magic on you this whole time and because I needed to find a way to get you to be with me. And now that you're married, he was apparently just set up to die anyways, I guess. So he felt like it was okay for him to tell me these things. I did not know how to process any of this. I did not. I listened, I absorbed, I didn't even begin to process it. I didn't think it was real. But then, you know, I couldn't talk to him for a couple days, like whatever. What after the end of that was pretty much the end of the conversation. We had literally talked for like 4 or 5 hours, and that was the end of the conversation. And then I didn't talk to him for a couple days, and on on the 13th, on February 13th, early in the morning, I had been texting him, and like I had even asked our mutual friend, like after that night, like the next day, I had called her and was like, "Have you talked to Alex recently?" And she's like, "Actually, yeah, I hadn't for a long time, and I just talked to him the other day." And I was like, "Does he seem okay to you?" It's like I was still like thinking that he was just like fucked up, you know. She's like, "Honestly, I don't know. I don't really know him that well, and I haven't really talked to him that much. I mean, he was really really nice, but it was weird to talk to him, and he did say some weird things, but like I don't really know him that well." She like couldn't really remember what he had even said. I just got this really bad feeling. I just got this really really bad feeling, and I started trying to text him and trying to call him, and he wouldn't respond. And then he responded at like 4 p.m. I'd literally been up all day trying to talk to him. I mean, I was at work and shit, but like I'd been trying to talk to him all day. And he wrote me, he texted me this little message that was like, "You don't got to worry about me. Um, I took some MDMA with a friend, and so right now I'm kind of buzzing or kind of floating. However you put a buzzing or floating, something like that."